You don't have any Stephen King?
You've got the shinin'.
I mean shiny.
Shh! You wanna get sued?
It's just your fate. You're that geeky Stephen King kid. There's one of you in every school.
Okay, that's him, that's Cujo, that's Cujo.
I was thinking along the lines of no TV and no beer make Homer something.
Oh, crazy.
Don't mind if I do!
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast celebrating the work of Stephen King, hosted by two lifelong constant readers. We do non-spoiler and spoiler reviews of King's published work and take a critical look at his film and television adaptations as well. We also discuss the latest King news and check in with each other on our ongoing King obsessions. It's the podcast where all things serve the King. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com. You can also like the Facebook page at Facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod and follow us on Twitter and every other level of social media, meaning Instagram, at Tower Junkies Pod. And if you'd like to support what we do here, you can become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for a ridiculous amount of bonus content spread across all of obsessiveviewer.com's various podcasts. Currently, I am doing a weekly review series on nightmares and dreamscapes. I'm going story by story and recording my thoughts on each individual story. I previously did that for Skeleton Crew and Night Shift. So if you sign up at the $2 or above levels, you'll have instant access to, at this point, an ungodly amount of hours of content on that alone. And I also do TV reviews and other book reviews. And at the $5 and above levels, you get that plus commentary tracks and what I call Patreon potpourri of me talking about movies and everything. So a lot of stuff. Go check it out. Patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. I'm one of your hosts, Matt Hurt, and you can find me on Twitter at TowerJunkiesPod or at ObsessiveViewer. And joining me as usual is Tiny. Tiny, how is it going?
Going good, man. Hello, fellow Stevies.
Fellow Stevies.
I was just thinking, there's no like nickname for Stephen King fans out there, is there?
Constant readers.
But that's too general. That's not specific to Stephen King.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is kind of co-opted by Stephen King. Yeah, but right. It is. I do feel like there should be something a little bit more Kingy than that. But totally. But yeah. Stevie's.
I mean, we'll come up with something and we'll trademark it and get rich.
Yes. Oh God, yes, please. Again, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. So yes. So today on the podcast, Tiny, we're going to be reviewing Carrie, King's first published novel. Very excited to talk to you about that. This is one of those novels that I had and have on rotation, just like I'll listen to the audiobook while I'm working, and just kind of have it sort of as background noise, but it's a good one. I like it. I don't think it's on my top 19, but we'll talk about that after the review. But it's very, very palatable, I would say.
Boy.
Yeah. But before that, we're going to do our standard news and check-ins. Tiny, do you have any Stephen King check-ins this evening?
I don't think I do, actually. I have not been reading Stephen King stuff lately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't. I mean, other than, an episode we did with Kim C.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it.
Nice. Did you didn't dive into any other Skeleton Crew stories, did you?
I have not yet. Okay. No.
Yeah. Any on Nightmares and Dreamscapes that catch your eye at all? Because I know that we're hopefully going to have Kim C back for another episode. with a couple of stories from Nightmares and Dreamscapes. Once I finish my Patreon series and everything. So, off the top of your head, or like seeing like the list or anything, I know that I just sprung that on you. Yeah.
Nothing that's really jumping out. I know at one point you told me about a story. I want to say it's not in Nightmares and Dreamscapes. It's called The Ledge. Is that on?
Oh yeah, that's in Night Shift.
Night Shift. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, The Ledge is
good.
really cool. Yeah, that one is wild. Yeah, absolutely. I have told you that I would recommend on Nightmares and Dreamscapes, I would recommend Dolan's Cadillac and Chattery Teeth. There's also Popsy is pretty good. The Moving Finger I really liked. And they got a hell of a band. And yeah. And the 10 o'clock people is cool too. So there's some cool stuff. But check out my review series on Patreon, guys. Patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Yeah. And we will dive into Nightmares and Dreamscapes in a later installment of this podcast. But we are going to hopefully do like a whole series on Carrie, because there's so much to this work. Like we have two direct adaptations on film, in movie form, feature film, a made for TV one, a sequel that we're probably not going to cover. But there's a lot to Carrie. The content that we'll provide about Carrie is sure to carry us through this summer or something. I don't know. But yeah, my only Stephen King check-in is that I've been reading Nightmares and Dreamscapes. And I've been finding myself really enjoying. So this is a slight tangent. I've been going to the pool at my complex, and I just found like I understand why people like reading like by the pool or by the beach. Like it is so relaxing. It is so like I never really have done that before. I don't know. So it's cool.
Yeah, whenever we go on one of our beach vacations, I always try to bring like a physical book with me to read on the beach. Yeah,
Nice.
There's something about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's very nice. Yeah, friend of the show who doesn't listen to the show, but friend of the show, Mike, who has appeared on the podcast and did the theme song for Obsessive Viewer, and is an OG co-host from Obsessive Viewer. He read Billy Summers while he was on vacation in Florida. And he was
nice.
Yeah, he was texting me about it. He really enjoyed it. And obviously I liked it too.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you want me to go ahead and run down a couple of Stephen King news items, Tiny?
Yes.
Okay. So I've got two pieces of news. The first being that the new movie adaptation of Salem's Lot that was originally going to be Labor Day weekend in theaters, that got shifted, moved all the way to April 21st, 2023. Which didn't come as a surprise to me, because we have had zero promotional material about this movie. And apparently it's likely due to COVID-related delays in post-production. I guess this is something that is industry-wide. It's something that's been an issue in the film industry. And yeah, so I don't know what like the fall like movie landscape is going to be if other movies get kind of postponed and everything. But do you have any thoughts on this? And do you have any thoughts on this?
I didn't realize that was an industry wide, the whole pandemic thing or COVID thing.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to me, it seemed like a bit of a convenient excuse, because they did reshoots like 6 weeks ago or whatever. So
yeah.
Probably like, oh, let's just throw this out there as an excuse so we can kind of re-edit this thing and see if we can save it, because it sucks.
Yeah, that's also what I'm nervous about.
Yeah, I can't get excited about this movie. I wish I could. It just feels, I don't know. It just feels, I don't know if it's a cash grab or if it's just like, let's do a Salem's Lot movie. Who can we get to do it? And they just kind of sit together from there. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but
well, it's
a bummer that I won't be here for the fall.
Yeah, I agree. It for some reason it feels like a fall type of story. I can't remember if it takes place in fall. But I think also just vampires kind of feel like a fall kind of thing. But I know that it is directed by like one of the writers of It for Andy Muschietti's It movies. And I think that's probably why okay, we got a lot of success with It and It Chapter 2, so let's go full bore into Stephen King, which is great. But I don't know. We'll see in April, but apparently it is set. It is going to be set in the 70s, which is pretty interesting to me. I'm glad they're not making it like a modern thing, because I think that will hopefully bode well for it, but who knows?
Yeah, that's good. I didn't realize it was set in the 70s either.
Yeah. Also, it's kind of nice because my plan was to do like, Salem's Lot, and then the Salem's Lot movie and TV movie and stuff for Tower Junkies. But now we can push that to next year, which is good because like I've fallen behind on like Carrie and Firestarter and stuff. Like all that's going to take us through the rest of the year pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens in April. The other piece of news I have is that the headline from Cinema Blend is Stranger Things creators talk Stephen King's The Talisman adaptation and how executive producer Steven Spielberg's influence shines through the horror. So the Duffer Brothers from who are behind Stranger Things, they are going to adapt The Talisman as a Netflix series. This was first announced not last March, but March 2021. And it's interesting. I have not read The Talisman. Tiny, you haven't either?
I've not.
Okay. Yeah, that is on the docket for us, that and Black House. I've been vocal about this, but like one of my very snarky kind of things is that like, it'll be cool to see the Duffer Brothers, adapt Stephen King rather than just rip him off. Because Stranger Things does play with Stephen King stuff. Like it's just so heavily influenced to be to the point of being kind of I don't know, kind of just ripping it off for me, in my opinion. So I don't know, it's kind of annoying, but sure, I think it'll be cool.
Yeah, lots of good things. I mean, I'm very curious to see the Duffers do something else besides Stranger Things.
Yeah.
That's exciting. And I mean, it's on Netflix and Steven Spielberg is involved. That's a hell of a formula. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
That's exciting. There's also a quote in this Cinema Blend article where they're talking about Talisman. Like there's a lot of supernatural things. There's a werewolf and all this stuff. And he was like, but at its core, it's really about a mother and a son and their relationship and their love for one another. So that's an inspiring quote, I guess, because it feels like they really get King and how it's about the characters most of the time, and the horror and whatever else that's going on is kind of ancillary or is kind of in spite of the true character relationships and stuff like that. So hopefully that's bodes well for the format and plot and stuff of the Talisman. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. I mean, as as back and forth as I am on Stranger Things and the influence from King, it'll be interesting to see them actually tackle a King property. Yeah, and with Steven Spielberg being involved, that's very interesting. But it's worth noting that they are very, very early in the process. So obviously they're going to do season 5 of Stranger Things, and then after that, maybe they'll focus on the Talisman. But they are launching like Upside Down Productions, I think, which is going to be a whole production company. So they'll have a lot of irons and a lot of fires. So,
I think that's sorry.
No worries.
Sorry, my headphones fell off. I think that's inspiring as well. The fact that they're trying to finish Stranger Things before they try something else, because it's good for Stranger Things and the Talisman. Like, it just makes me think back to Game of Thrones when David Benioff and the other guy,
DB Weiss,
DB Weiss, they were like moving on to other shit, and the last season sucked. So,
yeah,
I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see whenever it comes out. I would wager that it probably won't come out for... I thought I read somewhere that Stranger Things season 5 isn't even going to be expected until like 2024, but I don't know.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it'll be a while before the Talisman comes out. Yeah. So that's all the news and check-ins I have. Do you have anything else, Tiny, or should we dive into our Carrie review?
I think we're probably ready to go.
Okay, nice. All right. Well, as I said before, we're going to be reviewing Carrie, King's first published novel. It was published April 5th, 1974 by Doubleday. And yeah, so we're going to, as we usually do a non-spoiler and spoiler review. I'm going to separate those with a clip from a piece of music to separate it, but check the show notes for timestamps to navigate it and everything. But so to get into our review, I'm going to read the plot summary courtesy of StephenKing.com, and the synopsis is: the story of misfit high school girl Carrie White, who gradually discovers that she has telekinetic powers. Repressed by a domineering, ultra-religious mother and tormented by her peers at school, her efforts to fit in lead to a dramatic confrontation during the senior prom. So, Tiny, why don't you go ahead and give me an overview of your history with Carrie? I know that you just recently read it for the first time. So give me your history, and is there any particular reason why you didn't, why Carrie escaped you?
Yeah, I kind of just, have stayed away from the whole franchise, really. My only actual experience with Carrie is the 2013 movie, I think, with Chloe Grace Moretz. That's the only Carrie property I had seen before this year. I think the reason I kind of never tackled it is because I feel like I'd already seen it and already read it, because I the story is so it's so part of the pop culture. Like, the story's just out there, like what happens, like everyone knows what goes on. And so I just felt like I already knew the story, and I felt like I didn't really need to read it or see the movie or anything, just because it's part of the zeitgeist, and which is not a good excuse, really, or a good reason. I don't know. I don't really have a good excuse or a good reason other than that it's just kind of almost a ubiquitous story. But 2013 movie, I liked it fine. I thought it was a fine movie. And the book, of course I really liked it, but I need to read it again, because one of those deals where I kind of lost the thread once or twice.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I think a lot of the themes and a lot of the character traits, because again, it's typical King that the characters are what drives the story, and I think those themes and those traits stuck with me, and those are the things that I really liked about it. I also know part of the book is epistolary.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you listen to it in audiobook, that kind of gets lost a little bit, or it doesn't, the effect of it is not as effective.
Yeah.
And it's not a long book. I think the audiobook was 9 hours or something like that.
It was, I think about 9 hours. It's a very short book. Compared to other King novels.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I need to get a physical copy of it and read it to really get the full effect. I definitely liked it. I was just a pretty broad range of emotions, reaction wise to the book too. I think that was kind of wasn't expecting that, I guess. I definitely liked it. It's I think it would probably, pending a reread, would probably have a place on a top list somewhere, but
nice.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Nice. It's interesting because as someone who has read this book and listened to the audiobook several times, it's more of a comfort novel for me in a very weird way. Like, it's a novel that, I know what I'm expecting. I know what I'm getting into, which is the same with every King novel as well. But I don't know exactly why I return to it so frequently. Part of that is because it is very contained. It's very much a smaller statured novel, as opposed to, say, Salem's Lot or The Shining or any of the other early King works. So it's a little bit less of a commitment to kind of commit to, I'm going to reread Carrie. It's not like I'm saying I'm going to revisit Derry for another 1,200 pages again for it. But there's just something that makes it a little bit more palatable and a little bit more grounded for me in a way. And maybe it is because of the epistolary format, because there's a lot in it where it's just okay, well, leading up to the big event at the end of the book, we get that up front. We can we get bits and pieces throughout it, but we also get these little fragments of detail about the bullying and about the dynamics in the high school and that kind of teen angst and hormone-driven atmosphere and everything, which I find really compelling when King writes about it. And here it's just this this I don't know, it's this kind of slow building and then very, very fast building locomotive that's coming. Whereas with Christine, we have, which is kind of interesting because Christine and Carrie are kind of different sides of the same coin. One's female focused, one's male focused. And it's about teenagers. I'm in my head, I'm writing an essay, but but I just find it really interesting the way that King explores the teen social dynamics in Carrie. And we'll talk more about that in depth, but I do want to mention that on StephenKing.com, there is a little section for kind of a little paragraph about the inspiration for the novel. So I'm going to go ahead and just read that from StephenKing.com. Okay, so here we go. The character Carrie was a composite of two girls Stephen knew during high school. The story is largely about how women find their own channels of power and what men fear about women and women's sexuality. Carrie White is a sadly misused teenager, an example of the sort of person whose spirit is so often broken for good in that pit of man and woman eaters that is your normal suburban high school. But she's also a woman feeling her powers for the first time, and like Samson, pulling down the temple on everyone in sight at the end of the book. That's a quote presumably from King. But yeah, so How did you feel about the those kind of dynamics, the kind of cruelty of teenagers and hormones that run throughout the novel?
Yeah, it's captured so well in this book. And I think it was I think it was in On Writing when King was talking about writing Carrie. Oh, he kind of like gave up on it for a little bit, and he was like, I don't know how to write a teenage girl. And which is fair. But I think he showed it to his wife, and his wife was like, you dumbass, I'm right here. Like, I can help you with this. I was a teenage girl. I can help you write this story.
Yeah.
And obviously I can't relate to that part of the story, at least not directly. It's just incredibly well done. And I think what amplifies it so much is the fact that it's not just the fact that Carrie is bullied and treated poorly at school. It's that she comes home and she gets a whole nother form of it. And it's, she doesn't ever get a break. You know, I think the only time she gets a break is when she falls asleep at night, you know, and that's incredibly tragic and just, I mean, it's kind of terrifying in and of itself that like the wonder that she, you know, it's a wonder that she didn't break down sooner, you know, than the age of 16, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I will say that right from the outset, like that opening, the opening of the story is so like visceral and iconic. The kind of the plug it up scene, the tampon scene, the you know, the period scene. Like, I believe that King said that he had that idea as kind of a singular idea of that being the start of it. And then he went from there. But like listening to that and reading that section just really brings us into the story in a very just heartbreaking and horrifying way. And that's something that King does so well, is show the horror of humanity and like the cruelty of human beings without any supernatural stuff, most like sometimes. And like having that be the lead for the story, having that be our gateway into the story. Like, okay, this girl who is 16 has not yet had her first period, and she suddenly gets it, and she thinks that she's dying. Like that psychologically is so scarring and horrifying. And I think it's written incredibly well. And it's just, yeah. And when you kind of dovetail that into Carrie's home life with her mother and this just completely deranged, unhinged, religious zealot, it's a tragedy. It is an absolute tragedy of a story, and I love it for that.
And there's hardly even any redeemable characters. There's a few. The gym teacher, you know, she's a bit conscientious, you know, as well as the character of Sue.
Yeah,
she's a good person, really. She has remorse for how she reacted initially and tries to make up for it. But so many of the other characters, especially the ones that directly affect Carrie, are just atrocious. The Chris character, she's kind of like the lead popular girl who kind of led the tampon scene. She's just evil. I mean, her vindictiveness is so it's just crazy, and like she's just an awful human being. And then her mother that we kind of touched on already, and mom kind of tells her some things and goes into it that her dad was probably just as bad.
Yeah.
It's like she never stood a chance. I mean, it's really remarkable.
Absolutely. And when it goes into the detail about her father and mother and how he assaulted her and raped her, and also like the guilt that her mother felt just like all of that, and we can talk more in spoilers, but all of that is just so, it creates this compounding kind of thing with the story where you know what's coming, you know what's going to happen, but the tension keeps building, and the tension doesn't have that release until the end, but it's populated, like the story is populated by several, like you said, irredeemable characters, but even those irredeemable characters have circumstances in their life that are sort of, there's a vulnerability to them, or some of their actions are not, well, maybe not their actions, but some of their, like, they're victims of circumstance in some cases, and they're victims of situations that are beyond their control, or they're survivors of trauma, but that doesn't excuse their like cruelty or anything in the main story. But I don't know, it's just such an interesting narrative structure to have this be the lead up to a catastrophic, horrific event, and have it be following the protagonist of the story being this incredibly vulnerable and driven by hormones young woman who uses like this telekinetic ability eventually to do some real damage. So I just find it interesting that, like, of all the characters, Carrie is the most well-defined and the most kind of, I guess, relatable to an extent, or the most redeemable in a way, although maybe not.
Well, I think for me, I think it's fascinating that you kind of never lose empathy for her. I think even as we get into the the conflict and the climax of the book where she's just wreaking havoc,
going
it's
ham,
like, well,
as the kids say.
As they say. You still think, well, I mean, she's kind of justified. Like, I mean,
yeah,
these people were horrible to her. I mean, I don't know if you think she's justified, but it's like, you at least understand. You can, like I said, you can at least empathize to what she's doing, Whereas so many of the other characters, their drive and their influence is just, it's either, let's say, delusion with her mom, or it's just plain vindictiveness and evil, basically.
Yeah. Like Chris in general has this arc throughout the story where, again, she's kind of depicted as somewhat oh God, there's a word I'm looking for, like somewhat sympathetic, in that she's in that relationship with, oh God, what's his name? Billy? Is it Billy Nolan?
Might be.
No, I don't know. But anyway, she's in that relationship, and she is someone who is I don't know. She's someone who like there's a moment where they're planning out the prank, and they're planning it out, they're preparing for it and everything, and we're in her POV, we're in her like inner monologue, and she's talking about how she'll have sex with him tonight, because if she doesn't give him sex, he'll take it. And it's just so casual and terrible, but she's also doing this stuff where it's not, I'm not saying that it has to be one or the other or anything, but I'm saying that it's a complex character, and that she's also this person who is very much entitled and feels that she is owed a certain amount of respect, even though she does these horrific things. Like when her boyfriend yells at her, she, like, her thought is like, you can't talk to me like that. My dad's a lawyer. And like, that's funny, but it's also like, it's such an interesting story. It's an interesting novel because so many elements of it, so many kids, so many characters, seem as though they are either I don't, they're kind of beholden to their parents, or they are victims of their parents in a certain sense. So I don't know. I find the teen characters to be really, really interesting throughout it, which is what all the characters are basically.
Yeah, totally. I get that.
Yeah.
One of the other things that jumped out at me thematically is this book came out in the 70s, and I would say around, probably the mid 2000s or so, anti-bullying became a huge part of the education system in the United States. This day, it doesn't matter if it's an elementary school or a middle school or a high school, there's a lot of, I don't know if propaganda is the right word, but there's a lot of information about anti-bullying all over the school.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal now, and obviously for the better. And what I find interesting about this book is that it comes from a time where that didn't exist, right? That wasn't a movement at the very least.
Yeah.
And bullying in fiction, at least in my experience, bullying is mostly used for comedic effect at this time.
Yeah.
All the way into the 80s and 90s, there's the asshole jock who gives the nerd a swirly, or pulls his pants down in the hallway and everyone laughs at him. And people in the audience are supposed to laugh at it, right? Yeah. There's a few exceptions, right? But I think for the most part, that's how, as a theme, that's how bullying was used at the time. But in this story, it's nothing about any of the bullying is funny.
No.
And I think obviously one of the main reasons for that is because the victim of bullying is the main character. But even still, like if you look at I'm trying to think of other movies or stories that have, the main character gets bullied. I think what sets this apart even more is the fact that it's the bullying is horrific. Like it's used as an element of horror or just like blatant trauma. It's psychological trauma, like something like Revenge of the Nerds. Like that's kind of a goofy example. It's a comedy, but still the main characters are the victims of it. And it's like they're kind of angry, and it gives them drive to go kind of get back at the jocks, and I understand that's maybe not the best example, but in this one it's unique, especially for the time. That the bullying is used to that effect, and it's so effective. It's disturbing. It's super disturbing and horrific and dramatic.
Yeah, absolutely. It has this it has such a level of cruelty to it, and it has this this energy behind it that obviously none of it's, like you said, none of it is for comedic effect or anything, but there's this it defies what kind of happens in pop culture a lot of the time and everything, like you said, because it is that cruelty of, teenagers and everything. And the fact that like the things that happen in this story, the things that happen in the novel are kind of, they're basically, the chain of events start with the girls like laughing at Carrie for having a period. And then that escalates to them getting detention or getting, because the one compassionate adult in the story wants to like take away their right to go to prom because of their behavior and everything. And that just creates this chain reaction that it's kind of interesting to think about it, because it kind of does double duty in having it be about like teenagers taking things way too seriously, like taking things way too personally. I'm talking about like Chris in general, like Chris and Billy and their actions and everything. But also it's something that has this air of teenagers not knowing what a proportionate response is, or not knowing, like, just going complete, like not having the restraint or the maturity to just let something slide, or to let something be, or let someone be, even when it's something that is kind of presented in sort of a positive way, or in a kind of redemptive way, like with Sue telling Tommy that, you know, he needs to ask Carrie to prom and everything. Like that is self-serving on Sue's part, but also it also just leads to just the most tragic thing. Like the hope and the kind of wistfulness of Carrie at the prom is just, like, before it all goes to hell, is just so tragic and sad, because it's, I don't know, because it's so hard to kind of remember how important that your social status in like a high school is when you're a teenager, and that's your entire world. Like, I mean, we've both been out of high school for almost 20 years. Almost 20 years. Almost 20 years. Jesus. And like, yeah, I don't think about it. But it's wild. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, that whole scheme at the prom has an extra layer of cruelty to it. You know, it's surprisingly elaborate for some shitty teenagers to come up with.
Yeah.
But I don't appreciate it for that. I'm just like, that's just, it's wicked how diabolical it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you want to, well, let me kind of talk about bullying a little bit. And then we can go into spoilers, but, I don't know why, like, I don't, this isn't really interesting or anything, but, yeah. Do you remember there being much bullying in high school?
I was going to kind of ask you the same thing.
Yeah.
I think if you had asked me when I was 17 or 18, I'd have been like, although there's no bullying at our school, you know? And I think that kind of goes back to, sort of the perception of what bullying is. We think of the jock giving the nerd a swirly, right? Or wedgie, whatever. We think of it as physical, I guess. But that I don't remember anything like that in all 4 years. But there was some verbal things. Putting people down and kind of ganging up on people that I did see, and I don't think I participated in any of it, but I was kind of a observer and a conscientious observer. I could have stopped it.
Yeah.
But you know, looking back, there's a whole peer pressure and kind of the whole, I don't know I don't know what to do about this. There were one or two times looking back where I was like, you know, I should have probably said something there. Even in the moment when I was a teenager, I was like, I probably should have said something or stopped that. But
yeah,
I don't know if I experienced, obviously nothing even close to the bullying in this book. I never saw anything that extreme, but yeah, just some mostly verbal. In junior high, there's one person I remember just everyone wanted to fight all the time and never really got it. And I do remember that. I don't know. I guess that was bullying. I'm not sure how to categorize that, but I don't even know if you remember what I'm talking about.
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk off mic.
We can talk off mic, but yeah, for the most part, it's mostly verbal, which I think it's easy to write that off. You know, I think a lot of people are like, that's just teasing or breaking balls. And it's like, no, I think if it's bullying when you see it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's just locker room talk.
Fucking A, right? And some of it was in the locker room. That's where so that's where I saw it happen. You know, again, there's that dynamic of jock teasing the nerd. Yeah. Really, for me, it was, other jocks teasing other jocks. Yeah. And I think it's safe to categorize it as like verbal bullying. Yeah. So what about you? How did you? I
agree. There was definitely verbal and like emotional kind of bullying that was present. And it's interesting because like I never think about high school. I don't really care anymore, But like I remember like I was a ball of anxiety and everything, and like some of like I can't remember specific like examples or anything, but like I remember like the relatively like playful like kind of breaking balls thing like that, like imagine the imagine like the Michael Jordan gif where it's like I took that personally, like when you're a teenager and everything is important and you feel like everyone's opinion is important, that creates this just incredibly delicate ecosystem that like something. And also I should point out I had undiagnosed depression during high school. Right. So like anything that could be construed in a negative way or taken seriously, even if it's said in jest, could be completely like just not earth shattering, but it could be like, oh, I'm upset. Like this is a bad day now. Right. So yeah. And I'd be curious to know, like curious, but not that curious to know like what the climate is in like high school, like settings now, that like bullying is something that, is more talked about.
I think it's morphed into, I'm not even sure how to categorize it, but basically pressure. I think it's morphed into social media.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah.
It's like comparing lifestyles, comparing body types, comparing home life, what you project onto social media. I think that's become. I think that's what bullying has morphed into, and I'm obviously not an expert. This is all just my opinion. This is all conjecture, but I think it could be even more poisonous than the bullying was. But
absolutely. Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, the suicide rate for teenage girls has quadrupled since we were in high school, and that's horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to my TED Talk.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I've thought about this and said this before, but like, I can't imagine being a teenager again, but being a teenager in the world of social media and everything. Like I can't, God. Yeah. Like we had AOL. I think about that a lot. Yeah. Oh yeah. Like we had AOL Instant Messenger. That's about it.
Right.
And like that was navigating that as an anxiety-filled teenager who had had a brain disorder that made me think less of myself on a consistent basis, undiagnosed depression. That was hell itself. I can't imagine social media. Like, no, thank you.
So, I completely agree. My sister-in-law was a high school teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and she finally quit. She just got a new job. She just started summer, and her attitude and her stress levels have already changed. Just in like 2 or 3 weeks. And that was not about pressure that the kids experience. It's just about the bullshit she went through. And the school system she was at wasn't really bad. It wasn't like a horror story, but it wasn't good either.
Okay.
And it's just the presence of social media and phones and the technology. Like, she would just have kids just like start a FaceTime call in the middle of class.
Oh God.
She's trying to teach, and then like she goes over there and it's like FaceTiming their parents.
Jesus.
And she would be like, "Okay, mom and dad, we need to hang up the phone now." And she would go to hang up the phone, and the kid was like, "You can't touch my personal property. No, she's assaulting me. She's harassing me," and would turn it into a thing. And I was just like, I have no clue how she put up with it as long as she did. But she's a teacher for like 10-ish years, and she was just like, I'm done. And so she's already feeling so much better at her new job. So I mean, it's good for her, but it just makes me worry for all the other thousands of teachers out there, that put up with that shit.
Yep. And the kids, how they're growing up.
Of course the kids too. Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah. Oh. Well, yeah. Do you want to go into spoilers for Carrie?
Totally, yes.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and play some music to separate our spoiler discussion from our non-spoiler discussion. Check the show notes for timestamps and all that. But when we come back, we're going to be spoiling Carrie the novel. Right, and spoilers on for Carrie. Tiny, so you said that the story was very ubiquitous because of pop culture and all of that, and having seen the 2013 movie as well. How did you feel about it in the written form, and did anything about it surprise you, or was it pretty much what you expected?
I think the book is even more diabolical than the 2013 movie I saw. Like that obviously has its elements of disturbing elements and horror and stuff like that. But the book, I think, because it's getting a glimpse into Carrie's mind, just makes it all the more horrific. Makes it so much more potent horror. And was just highly effective. Like, again, I was just so disturbed by it. And then her, spoilers now, just her reaction to it, where she literally starts to destroy the town.
Yes.
And I knew that going into the book and going into the movie back in 2013, I knew that she like went nuts and like killed people and went crazy, but I never really understood that she like locks them in the gym, electrocutes them with the water, and she's like blowing all the fire hydrants, and she's destroying the town. I never fully understood the carnage, the true carnage that she wreaked on the town, if you will. That was especially potent in the book. It's great storytelling, but it's just disturbing,
Yeah, I agree. And to King's credit, and it's something that he does a lot, we've talked about a lot, him building up toward the finale, and building up the tension and hinting at, what the climax of the story is. And a lot of times he kind of tips his hat a little too much. Sometimes he does that, but here, like, we know from the outset, like, oh, something terrible happened, something devastating happened, and as we progress through it, like, we need to prepare for something horrific. And what we get is like double what the expectation is, sort of, because of the town destruction and everything. But just like the completely horrifying prospect of locking people in the gym and just going to town on them and electrocuting them, killing them and everything is just devastating. It really brings home the tragedy of the story. And one part that I really continuously get in my head about, or not in my head about, but it sticks with me every time I read this book, is when Miss Desjardins tries to help Carrie, or she tries to do something, like she like yells at Carrie when the chaos is ensuing, and in Carrie's mind she's saying that, like, I can see who she really is. She's actually, like, she's not on my side. She doesn't like me. She thinks I'm a freak too and everything. And then I believe she kills her at that point too. And it's just, it again plays up that whole teen hormonal everything, like any attention that's paid to you or is brought down to you, whether positive or negative, could be construed as an extreme negative that will spiral you into actions that cannot be taken back. And it's really horrifying. Yeah,
I think that's a good example of how you put it earlier, which was, you said that when you're that age and in that ecosystem of high school, everything matters.
Yeah.
That's so true. Like, I mean, everything is either funny or silly or super dramatic or just uber important, but it's like, it's a fucking history quiz. Calm down. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or it's like, it's a joke or something, you know, but just never know, and like such a fragile teenage mind, how something's going to affect them. And you know, it's really, I kind of forgot about the whole gym teacher thing, where she's basically like, this kid's weird and a freak, but I kind of have an obligation to stop this or help her, but I don't really want to. And Carrie picks up on that, you know, and that's she holds it against her later. But you know, teacher probably was thinking it was an insignificant thing. Right? It's something she probably didn't even necessarily remember. Well, I'm sure she remembered the whole tampon thing, but
right.
Well, and it was insignificant to her, but it was hugely important to Carrie.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, she tries to extend that olive branch. She tries to throughout the story. She's in Carrie's corner. She's punishing the kids that bullied her in the locker room and everything. And it's kind of a weird indictment of, like, you know, bully culture, if that's a thing, but like of just saying that, oh, hey, I mean, you can do everything you can, but that's maybe not enough. It's very bleak. Right. Yeah. But another thing about just kind of like the bullying aspect of the story is that something I found really interesting that King did is that when they pull the cord and the blood comes down and everything, the bucket hits Tommy in the head, and like, it's kind of said that like that's kind of what killed him. Like, he dies from that. And like, to just think about that as kind of an example of the cruelty and lack of foresight of children, basically, that are teenagers and are driven by their hormones and everything, and driven by this like fragility of like a developing brain and everything. And to the point where they will do something that is incredibly heinous, incredibly cruel, very much just, I mean, it is a despicable act that they do. And then even without the supernatural stuff, without the telekinesis, without any of it, like that alone is something that killed a kid. Like, and I just find that to be really interesting that King implemented that in it, almost as if to say that, you know, I mean, it, you know, this is a crazy telekinesis story, but also look how fucked up these kids are. And yeah,
teenagers are dumb. They're idiots. Yeah. And what's crazy is they don't know it. They think they know everything. Mm-hmm. Really, they know fuck all.
Nope.
And they can't see all the consequences of their actions.
Right.
And fuck, Jesus, I was so guilty of that when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
Now it never resulted in anyone dying.
Yeah. Right.
You know, that's a it's a great example of that, right? That Tommy dying from the bucket hitting him in the head. You know, that's like when you're a done teenager, you're like, oh, we're gonna do this and it's gonna be funny, and then the guy fucking dies.
Yep. I
mean, that is the most teenage thing I can think of.
Absolutely, just lack of consequences or lack of thoughts of consequences because hey, you're untouchable. You're a teenager. These are the best years of your lives. It's messed up. Yeah. And the other side of that, or the other kind of, thing to kind of talk about Carrie as a character, when she is at the prom and she is, like she is kind of on cloud nine. She's realizing like, oh, this is, like she's experiencing a completely different side of what is her entire life, basically. That and when we watch the De Palma film, we'll talk about that as well because I think that's depicted very well in the movie. But in the book, it is so like it's like I said, it's that locomotive that's heading toward disaster. But in that moment, we want it to kind of switch tracks and go down like we want her to be okay, because it feels just so good that she feels happy for once, and it's kind of cruel on Stephen King's part, but yeah. Did that resonate with you at all?
Yeah, definitely. But I think it mostly I was just thinking about like how this is just all set up. This is just attempt to build her up just to tear her down.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, I guess only partly because Sue is actually, she actually wanted Carrie to enjoy that moment and have some redemption, but everybody else was like, fuck that, we're going to build her up and tear her down. Like, we're going to use this to take her down a notch again. I just knew I knew it was building towards that, and it's like just added to the cruelty for me. I wasn't really thinking about, oh, this is a nice moment for her, because it's like, no, it's all going to get ripped away in a heartbeat, you know?
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, yep.
So I totally get what you're saying, though. It's, you know, it's like we need a break from all this tragedy and craziness, which I think we have that tender moment at the very end, which I don't necessarily mean to jump all the way to the end, but she confronted her mom. She has a stab wound and she's basically dying.
Yeah. And
Sue finds her and they have like a conversation. I think it's partly telepathic.
Yeah, like Sue like asks her to like look inside her to, you know, see that she didn't intend this and everything, and like this wasn't her doing. Yeah.
Right. And we get a tender moment between those two characters, and like it's kind of too late. She's gonna die, but it's that is the one redeeming kind of, I don't know about joyous moment, but it's a it's a moment of reprieve.
Yeah.
All the horror and just torture and awfulness of the book. And I'm glad that, I don't know if you can call it a happy ending, but something she kind of makes a friend. Like it's like there's
Yeah.
a reciprocity of respect and empathy between two characters. And Carrie, I don't know that she's ever felt that.
No, definitely not. And it's interesting too, because even Sue has like that moment where she is like thinking about Tommy and Carrie, and like she even has a moment where she's like, yeah, well, maybe Tommy will fall in love with her and everything, and wouldn't that be hilarious, or wouldn't that be rich? Like, oh yeah, and it's implied that she's pregnant with his kid and everything. But even that's playing up the status of Carrie, like, oh, there's no way that would happen. I'm a good person because I put this thing together for her, but also, yeah, she's still Carrie White. I'm still Sue Snell. Yeah.
That's a good point. I don't really remember seeing that well where she confronts her mom.
Yeah.
I kind of remember what physically happens, but I can't remember all the dynamics of what was said and everything.
Yeah, the mattress side moment is really it, and I'm curious to see. I'm excited to go back and watch the movies and everything, because I feel like 2013's remake, or either 2013 or the 2002 made-for-TV movie, handled it the best way, because what I just find it really interesting that like I think Margaret sees that all the destruction and everything going on, or she's in her head about like Carrie, like, oh, now Carrie has a social life. Carrie, now this man is going to take Carrie to like a bar, and then he's gonna have sex with her in the parking lot, and she's going to, she's not going to be pure, and she's going to have the same things happen to her that happened to me and everything. And she has all of this like anger and rage, and she gets the knife and she's like prepared to kill Carrie. And Carrie comes home and she's like, I came here to kill you, and you came here to, like, you're ready to kill me. Like, that's really fitting, or whatever. I don't know. She didn't say anything like that. Like, she just commented on it. But the way that she kills her mother is incredible and intense and personal. She uses her telekinesis to, I believe it's to slow down or stop her heart. And
right.
Yeah, and the way King describes it, like the blood leaving the vessels and everything, is just like that is such a not such a horrific end for a horrific character, but also just very, very brutal and personal.
Kind of fucking cool, really.
Yeah. I was gonna say that too.
I mean, if you're gonna have telekinesis in a movie and a character just go absolutely ham, why not have her just like? I mean, it would have been even cooler if she just like moved her heart from her chest or something.
Yes.
With telekinesis, that would have been.
Oh yeah.
Kind of like a fun, gory thing, which I don't know if that's really in tone with this story. Maybe it is. I don't know. But
if he Temple of Doom did. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but that was just really, that I always kind of wince at that and everything.
Very chilling, sure.
Yeah. Did you catch the body reference or connection?
No.
So,
I didn't.
I never noticed this. I never knew this, but when they talk about the Amoco gas station in town that's being destroyed and everything, they say it is Teddy's Amoco, and they it's Teddy Duchamp from The Stand, from not The Stand, but from The Body / Stand By Me.
Okay.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So yeah, so we can kind of start winding down. What else can we talk about in spoilers? Like anything else we didn't talk about, or any thoughts you had on the book?
Well, we didn't talk about the whole I don't know what you want to call it, the side story of the like investigation.
Oh
all
yeah.
that. I thought that was a little almost a little out of left field and just kind of
Okay.
a place maybe. It kind of took me out of the story a little bit, and I was just a little. It was just an odd thread, kind of a loose
Yeah.
thread. I think it could work if you're showing it in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
You're showing like a news interview or something,
Yeah.
or scenes from a court battle or something.
Yeah.
I think it could be effective in that way, but it just felt a little kind of jarring and kind of took me out of the story a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't really care for it that much.
I'll agree in part. I didn't mind it. Like the idea of the government putting together like a white commission and kind of figuring like having parts of the book or the epistolary parts of the book include like testimony from the white commission is really interesting. The part that that took me out of it, and I think that part of that is part of this is because of the audiobook process of this, or like reading the audio or listening to the audiobook as opposed to a physical book, is when you get the testimony kind of toward the end of, I think, the sheriff of Chamberlain, that they are asking him questions, and it's literally like, question, do you know who this was? Answer, yes, I did. Question, answer, question, answer. And it drags it down a little bit. Now, I think that only happens really at the end, but it was still like, okay, I don't want to read a transcript of something. Like, I just want to watch the world burn.
Nice.
Yeah. But
yeah,
no,
I think if maybe in actual written form too, like if I was reading the physical book, that may have translated better, or I may have connected with it more. But so maybe it's just not an audiobook thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again, I listened to this book one time, so
Right.
I really need to give it a go. And
yeah, yeah. So I'm trying to dig up my top 19. Okay, so do we want to kind of wind down or have anything else to say about Carrie?
I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay, nice. Yeah, and I kind of forgot to run through. I kind of briefly did, but it was adapted by Brian De Palma in 1976, and then in 1999 there was a sequel movie that's kind of unrelated to the source material, but The Rage, Carrie 2. And then in 2002, I think Brian Fuller was involved in this, but there was a made-for-TV movie. And then in 2013, there was a remake. And then also in the late 80s, I'll just read from Wikipedia, a Broadway musical adaptation, Carrie, was staged in 1988. It had transferred to Broadway from the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford-upon-Avon, England. The book and orchestrations were revised and updated for a 2012 off-Broadway production. The 2012 off-Broadway production was a moderate success, receiving mainly positive reviews, unlike its predecessor. So it's kind of interesting. I would have loved to have seen the musical.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But as far as rankings are concerned, it is not in my top 19 favorite King novels. I will say that I do have, I have read 42 Stephen King novels, not including short story collections and stuff. I have a different list for that. But of the 42 novels I've read, Carrie is sitting at number 31. So that feels a little bit low, but also King has a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff. Where do you kind of rank this, if anywhere? Would it make your top 19?
I think it might. I'm looking at my top 19 right now, and bottom 10 are really pretty interchangeable as far as where they're ranked.
Mm-hmm.
Like my number 10 is Cujo, but that could easily be my number 18 or whatever. Yeah. Like it's I just kind of, it's not really about the number. It's just that like I want them on my list sort of. So I think I might be comfortable removing my 12 spot, which is Mr. Mercedes.
Oh, interesting.
Putting Carrie in there. Just I'll put it tentatively. I'll put that out there.
Nice. Yeah. Very nice. That's good to hear. Nice. I do have a quick anecdote. Okay. I don't know how this is going to sound. I don't know how I'm going to sound with this, but I have recently been, when I go to sleep, I have recently been playing... I've been playing episodes of podcasts, and I mean, a lot of them are my own podcasts. So so I've been listening, like sleeping to the sound of our shows, and I fell asleep listening to our top 19 Stephen King adaptations episode of Tower Junkies, and like in the dream, and like this doesn't usually happen when I have outside noise playing while I sleep, but I think because I know the thing that I'm listening to so well, it's infiltrating my dreams. But like I had a dream where I was editing that episode of the podcast because I was listening to it. Yeah, very random. But anyway, yeah. I also had a dream where I spoiled the Dark Tower series for my sister intentionally. And felt very bad about it, but yeah. It was weird.
Talk about evil.
I know, right? Yeah. But then again, she'll never read the Dark Tower series, so
true.
Yeah. So I don't know.
My wife is so the opposite of spoilers for me.
Oh, yeah.
She actually wants to know what's going to happen.
Oh, wow.
Like when we were watching The Godfather, she was like, she's like, what's going to happen to Fredo? I'm like, watch the fucking movie and you'll find. She's like, I don't care. I just tell me. So I was like, all right. I told her, and she's like, oh, okay. And then she watches it, and I'm like, what? I don't understand that. Like she just doesn't care. She's like, just tell me what happens.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me.
Honestly, I don't get that either. Jess is kind of the same way, but not as aggressive with that. Like she will watch a show and then she'll get kind of like, so she's been watching 911, the Fox procedural whatever, Ryan Murphy show. She's liking it. And at one point there's like a plot thread where, there's like a mystery about someone's background or backstory, his childhood, and like a couple of episodes kind of pass where it's like hinted at, and she's like, I need to know. And I was like, I'll look it up. I don't care. So I looked it up and I was like, oh, that's pretty wild. And then like she was like, you need to tell me right now. Like you need to tell me.
Wow.
Yeah. But I didn't. And yeah.
Paige is so bad about it. We'll be watching something like historical. Mm-hmm. We were just recently watching I think it was called First Lady on Showtime.
Oh, okay.
About like they picked 3 first ladies, Eleanor Roosevelt, Betty Ford, and Michelle Obama, and they just kind of did. Have you heard of that? Have you?
I've heard something about it. Yeah.
Okay. It was a pretty good show. I liked it a lot. But she was like, we were like 1 or 2 episodes in. She was like, she just pulls up her phone and starts Googling Betty Ford. Like, what happened to Betty Ford? I'm like, well, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you're going to spoil all. And I was like, don't tell me. I don't want to know. Yeah. I don't know anything about Betty Ford, really. I don't want to know what happens. Like,
wow.
Fuck. And after an episode, when something would happen, I'd go and look up how accurate it is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
or when we finished it, I would say like, okay, who is this character and how does she know this? Oh, okay, this was someone who worked with her husband, so on and so forth. But
yeah,
that just boggles my mind that she does that. When we're watching The Queen, she does that. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry for the tangent. But.
Oh yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's our review of Carrie, the novel. Glad to hear that it'll possibly make your top 19. That's exciting.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Oh, and I meant to mention that the famously the anecdote that Tabitha dug a draft of it or parts of pages from it out of the trash and like kind of encouraged Steve to keep working at it and everything. And like I had read that he wrote the novel. This was the fourth novel that he wrote, but the first that was published, and he wrote it while they were living in a trailer, I think, and he wrote it on like a typewriter that he borrowed from Tabitha. Like it was Tabitha's typewriter.
Okay.
So yeah. So good.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was the fourth one that he wrote. I knew it was the first one he published. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yep. So that just goes to show behind every good man, there's a good woman that's willing to dig stuff out of the trash. So
tell them about periods.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. All right. Should we wind down and end this episode?
Yes, sir. Yep. All
right. Well, we are going to go ahead and get out of here. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll be back next time with our review of Brian De Palma's 1976 movie of Carrie. So look forward to that. Once again, please check out Patreon if you want more content. Like I said, I've been doing what I've been dubbing the Church of King, where mostly on Sundays, hopefully I can keep to that, but on Sundays I release an episode on Patreon for $2 and above patrons, where I talk about a collection, 4 stories from a Stephen King short story collection. Right now I'm doing Nightmares and Dreamscapes, tons of content up there. And I also have Skeleton Crew and Night Shift on there. I also have my in progress reviews from last year or so about Billy Summers. I'll be doing that for Fairy Tale in September as well. So sign up, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer at the $2 and above levels. Tiny, any parting thoughts?
Nope.
All right, great. Well, thank you guys so much for listening, and yeah, long days and pleasant nights.
May you have twice the number.
Yeah. And now, here's a short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. To hear the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy. Which is maybe a little bit of a stretch because it is an insane proposition. It's an insane idea that, oh, okay, the rainy season, like we're a small town and this rainy season comes once every 7 years and you need to protect yourself from it. Okay, well, no, that is ridiculous. That's insane. But it's also this idea of like, well, if they did tell them directly, like, oh yeah, the toads are going to come down, they're going to kill you, and they're going to destroy everything in this ritualistic thing that comes once every 7 years, they would have the same reaction. Like, oh no, you guys are fools. We know more than you because we are from a different economic class. We're from a different area of the country. You're just trying to scare us because of that baked in, maybe light animosity that our two cultures or our two economic states are, you know, kind of predetermined to have. Like that conflict is supposed to be.
This podcast was edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find links to all of our shows at ObsessiveViewer.com/podcasts. For exclusive bonus content, including reviews, commentaries, and B-roll episodes, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.